Welcome back. That's right. This is the Dead Simple Podcast returning. It's your boy Jamie, Hate Daddy, whatever you want to call me. Been a while, y'all. Almost a year since we did our last podcast, but I am officially back for a second season. And for today, we're going to be having the first returning guest as well. And that was my first guest ever in Ru5tK1ng. Now, I've already kind of gone over what Ru5tK1ng is as a player, both in the introduction of the podcast that we recorded, as well as in the first podcast that we did almost 2 years ago at this point. However, having Rust on now felt appropriate given that a lot has changed since between my last podcast and now. We've had new releases with all of the major Doom source ports on online with Zdaemon, Odamex, and Zandronum. We've had plenty of league activity. We've had plenty of shifts in the multiplayer scene that have gone from Oda to Zandronum, back to Oda, while Zdaemon has still remained relatively active. It was really important to have Rust on because Rust is one of those guys that has a good sense of what's kind of going on in the different ports, not necessarily within the communities, but he knows how the source ports are built, what the approaches are, what the goals of the ports are, and Rust is quite versed himself in how these ports are made, so he can explain that really well. So over this podcast, we talk about Odamex leagues, Zandronum leagues, the current state of all the ports, and it's a really good conversation, so I hope you guys get a chance to sit back, listen, and enjoy. Welcome back to the Dead Simple Podcast, and I've got my first returning guest, the very first guest actually, and that is Ru5tK1ng. We held the first Dead Simple Podcast at the time. I don't believe it was called the Dead Simple Podcast, but now it is the Dead Simple Podcast, and that was about a 3-hour conversation that covered a whole lot of shit. Don't think we're going to go that far into detail today, but Rust is a very knowledgeable player, one of my closest friends. I've known the guy for, at this point, God, almost 20 years. Accomplished mapper, accomplished player, even has contributed code, has been an administrator, has had a lot of success pretty much in any venue that he stepped foot in the Doom community. So, Rust, welcome back, brother.
Oh, it's good to be back to your wonderful crowd of like 3 people, Capo, and Capo.
Yeah, I hope Capo's not listening to this, but I know he is.
You know, he is, ever since he got banned again.
Oh, yeah. He's Doom thirsty.
Yeah, because they let him in for a little bit and for what, like 3 months?
Yeah,
it was. And then he got banned for being himself.
You give him an inch, man. You give him a fucking inch and he takes a mile.
Honestly, I don't even know why he got banned. I really didn't pay attention to anything he said because most of the time it was like at 3 a.m. in the morning and I'm already asleep.
Straight up just got banned for getting on Ralph's nerves. Like, that's
what I said, and everybody was like, "No, that's not true."
That's what it was.
I know that's what it was.
Ralph literally was like saying, like, Ralph was like, literally, I remember what he said, and it was something to the effect of, "I told you if you got on my nerves or annoyed me, I was going to ban you. It's time to go." And that was it.
I know, I saw that too, but apparently he also was kind of annoying with complaining, I guess.
Oh, he's always annoying. His existence is annoying.
Ever since he stepped foot in like IDO and Zdaemon.
Yeah, like the guy's a parasite. Of course he's annoying. And on top of that, he's been a detriment to the community with DDoSing and just a black eye. And I'm not talking about the black eyes that he seems to constantly have, but he's a legitimate stain on the community. So
it's probably like Gyros, man. Dude, finally got a piece of him or something.
He stays getting his ass whooped. Every picture I see of that guy, he's got a black eye. Like someone fucked him up. Which is how you know he, at this point, like you probably don't want to fight him. And I'm dead certain I've had this conversation with people before. But he just stays getting bodied, bro. It's ridiculous. I don't get it.
Oh, just like in Doom, huh? Who would have known?
Well, he's one of those players that if you play long enough, eventually you'll get good. But the only good thing that he's produced, and it hasn't even been him, it was more the capo quotes.
Oh, he did start Odamex Thunder, though. I think that was more of a nub hat thing before they both disappeared.
I'm not giving him any positive, like not one shred of positivity. He will not receive that from me. I can promise you that much. So let's get off of capo because this is already more attention than I want to be giving him. So We're here today. This is the first podcast I've done in a while. This is going to be what I consider season 2 of the Dead Simple podcast. The goal right now is to kind of launch them more towards the spring and the summer when I'm a little bit more free to be able to do these. And it seems to be a time of year where not only I'm more available, but quite a few people are. And that could be due to a variety of things. But nevertheless, that seems to be when I can match up with people the best. So this is season 2, rather, episode 1. And we've got quite a bit of stuff to talk about with relation to Doom, because there's been a pretty big change in the Doom landscape since the last time you and I spoke. We've seen updates on all 3 major points. Zandronum went to 3.1, Odamex went to 1.0, and what is it, Zdaemon 1.2?
18.20. 1.18.20.
Okay, so they're still in beta 20 or beta 18 basically. At this point, I guess it wouldn't be beta any longer, but whatever. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not well versed in what's going on in the Zdaemon world. The Zandronum update, I think, has been a very good update. They've changed the mouse. Apparently, they've made changes to the netcode, though I've always argued I never felt like Zandronum had a horrible netcode. I just didn't care for the mouse, and now that they've updated that, I'm pretty happy with the port right now as a whole. I don't know if you've gotten a chance to experience or give any thoughts on it.
No, I really actually have not played 3.1 in any kind of PvP setting. I think I've only played like 3.1 probably less than 5 times since it's been out, and 3 maybe. Mm-hmm. The netcode was never really a problem when it came to PvP. I think a lot of the holes became apparent when you played more of the crazier mods out there to do a lot of scripting and decorate and a lot of different crazy things, that you started seeing the netcode fall apart of it. But as long as everybody was on stable connections, you didn't really run into any problems with a CTF or dual. But I guess, everybody's mileage varies, just like their connection.
It's true.
But I do think that it is definitely a step in the right direction, at least for PvP, because one of the biggest gripes for years was always about Zandronum's mouse, feeling floaty or slow or whatever, verbs people want to describe it as. So when they did the mouse from ZCC, I think that kind of quieted that camp for a bit, because those were really the only main complaints that people had against Zandronum when they didn't play it, was the mouse and the physics, and I guess the netcode. So the netcode probably got a little TLC here and there, but I don't think it got any kind of crazy revamp or anything. As you said, the mouse got better. So really, there's really no reason for people to kind of shit on Zandronum as much as they used to, because it's pretty good now.
Yeah.
I mean, the only argument that hasn't been addressed, as far as I know, is just people's complaints of skating, feeling like they're on ice, which I never got. I don't know what's, behind the scenes in the engine on that end, but personally, I never had a problem with the physics. I had more of a fucking problem with having like 1 pixel high flags, and that was all 3 ports.
Yeah. I think the skating feeling too would depend on the servers and how they ran them. If they ran them with like any sort of air control, I think that exacerbated that problem. But I agree. I've never felt like Zandronum's movement was bad. In fact, like even going back to the Skull Tag days, I always preferred that movement to any other port. Like when you play Odamex and when you play Zdaemon, you just feel slow and like clunky. But I feel like in Zandronum, you feel a lot smoother. The upside that Zdaemon and Odamex, I don't know, Odamex could be debatable, but Zdaemon certainly in the past was that the mouse was just much better and the netcode was much better, but that's not the case anymore. And I said this earlier and I'll say it again, I don't think the netcode was really that bad in the previous version 3.0. Definitely the mouse was not good. It was so bad, in fact, that people were using custom clients, which is a can of worms that they've let that cat out of the bag, and now you can't put it back in. So hopefully with just adding it into the stock client at this point, people will refrain from using custom clients, but I doubt they will, given that we know that you can. And at this point, what's really motivating people to stop using those custom clients? So I think that's probably my only complaint about Zandronum, but that's not a version specific problem. That's an indefinite problem as long as the community remains, or the port itself rather, remains open source. So we'll have to see. But my initial impression of Zandronum 3.1 is pretty good. I don't have any complaints. You and I are actually working, and I shouldn't say you and I because it's been mostly you and Strangle, and a few other folks are working on a WAD that's going to be coming out, and it's going to be Zandronum focused, given that it's 3D floors and decorate, so no other port can really run these. Freon is the WAD that you came up with as the title that we're working on, which is a free-for-all based WAD. While we're on the topic of Zandronum and 3.1, I think it's appropriate to bring that up if you want to discuss that a little bit.
Oh, well, I want to backtrack a little bit to a point you brought up about the custom clients.
Mm-hmm.
You probably weren't around for it, but the whole motivation for bringing out the client was because a lot of the players had, requests for developers to do a lot of client-side stuff, improvements with the UI and, of course, the mouse and, things like, was it latency graphs or was it ping graphs? I can't remember.
Couldn't tell you.
I've never used ZCC, but there was a lot of, fixes in there that benefited the players in, not necessarily the servers in. And it was just kind of like a lot of quality of life fixes that never got into Zandronum until recently, this last version. And there was a lot of tickets, well, not a lot, maybe, a handful or two people requesting these things. And they're like, okay, we'll get to it. And they never got to it for, the devs have their own timeline of things they want to cover. So that was mainly the reason that ZCC became a thing, because, people like these changes, but they weren't getting into Zandronum because there wasn't a lot of updates. So it's like, all right, well, we'll do it ourselves. So yeah, it probably won't ever disappear, but if they add in the things that made ZCC popular, people probably would be less inclined to use them and just stick with the stock one. But that again requires an active developer. So it's basically like saying it's kind of their fault, for sleeping for so long for a bit, for not really, listening to some of the players as much, because, it's no secret that Zandronum's development is primarily aimed towards more of the modding scene, and the PvP is kind of, this redheaded stepchild. So in terms of like things that affect either side, it's like no contest that the modding scene gets more of the attention for fixes and bugs and things, and everybody else kind of has to like complain enough to like be heard. So I don't know. That's just what it is with the port. It's always been that way.
Yeah.
So I think it's in a better spot than it was, because for a long time, it was just like, oh, is 3.1 ever coming out? Yeah, probably 2030. Well, they beat that by 8 years at least. So that's a good sign, maybe.
That's Doom pace.
And one thing that most people probably don't know is word on the street is if 3.1 is probably the last of the 3X, version. The next version that may come out might be 4.0, or maybe it might be 3.2, but after 2 is definitely going to be 4.0. So I don't know. Suppose there's some big things coming with 4.0, but I don't know. I don't really keep up with the development anymore, so it just remains to be seen.
Yeah. Well, just to be clear, so when you talk about PvP and modding, just to give the listeners some backstory to that, just because not everybody necessarily has an understanding of the Doom community. Zandronum as a source port, their focus is largely on modifications. So specifically with mapping, with decorate, with, custom enemy sets, custom game modes, custom weapons, that sort of thing. It hasn't been about PvP, which is player versus player. So while they do have an emphasis on multiplayer, it's not competitive deathmatch multiplayer. It's generally multiplayer that is secondary to their primary focus, which is the modification, which is what you alluded to. I just wanted to kind of clear that up. Yeah, and regarding everything else, I don't really, I don't know what else to say. We'll just have to see if the ZCC client continues to get any burn. I guess we'll never really know. That said, it is what it is at this point, and there's not much else we can say. So while in Zandronum, I kind of introduced Freon a second ago. Do you want to kind of go over what we can be looking forward to with the Freon WAD?
Mainly just kind of like continuation of Neon, because Neon was originally supposed to be 32, 33 maps, and it kind of got split in half. I dropped out of the project because I just was burnt out of mapping and had other things I wanted to focus on. A few other people kind of felt the same. So Neon itself, the previous iteration, was only 15. And, I said, okay, well, I have an idea. I have some inspiration and designs I want to get out. So I talked to Strangle and we were like, okay, we'll try it. And we pulled out a few older maps and retooled them a bit and started pumping out some new ones. So I guess just think of more of the formula with just a little bit, a little bit of a shakeup in terms of weapons, is trying to add a couple of new ones just to spice up some things. And so it's the whole joy of trying to balance those out so they have a role and they're not like breaking the gameplay.
Right.
So there's been like 2 betas out. Prog is a little bit slower than it used to be just because of the, mapper size. But I predict probably like 16, maybe 20 if we keep it up. It really depends on, you and him, doing your part and picking up the slack.
I mean, I've put out 2 so far. I definitely plan on a third. A fourth might be pushing it, but I think 16. I'm with you. I think 16. I mean, we're already at like 12, aren't we? 13.
Yeah, we're at 13.
Yeah. So I mean, 16 is doable. You'll probably get some guest submissions here and there that we can clean up. And
there's another guest submission too in the works that I'm trying to.
And if Wrangle and I do it, then that already puts us at 15.
Yeah.
Something in that area, 14, 15, 16, something to that effect. We'll get it done. It's just that the question is not if, it's when. And we're a group that we play test the shit out of our series. The upside to a free for all is that we can just throw a server up, tell people to come play, and we can get lots of people to play. It's not as comprehensive as dueling, where you need to focus on specific elements that you're trying to accomplish when mapping for dueling. Free for all is generally a little more wide open, and we're willing to be accepting of gameplay that's not so detailed and focused like dueling is. So I personally think mapping for free for all gives you a little bit more room for creativity, but
yeah, it does. I say the ultimate form of like creativity is more of single player based or cooperative based, because there's a lot of things that you couldn't do in multiplayer and have it work out well. Right. You couldn't do some crazy kind of structures or some awkward spawning or hallways that kind of look the same because people get lost and it just feels like shit.
Yeah.
So probably doing CTF are probably on the other end, where it's like you can't really go too crazy with some of the things you do, or you got to be a little more, like you said, detail focused. Free for all definitely gives you a little more freedom. It's a little more relaxing because you can kind of just let the gameplay carry some questionable designs, as long as it's not like terrible design choices.
Right. Yeah, I think that's the thing, right? Like, especially when we talk about like spam style maps, like sure, like that's in some sense, I guess, some lazy mapping, but at the end of the day, sometimes that's all people want to do is they just want to load up a server, get into a game, turn their brains off and play.
Yeah, and that's actually quite a lot of describes a lot of deathmatch players.
Yeah,
that only play deathmatch. That's them to the T.
You can still make it like a good map and just say like, okay, if you manage to spam, you'll do well, but you set up like a clear obstacle in the way of spamming, or you set up like a series of things that you have to do in order to spam. Some maps will do like a series of teleporting. Some mappers will just put that spamming weapon in the middle of the map that leaves you vulnerable. should you go and grab it and attempt to spam. So there's lots of different things that you could do to combat it, but I don't think there's anything wrong with saying like we're going to capitalize on this style of play because we know people enjoy doing it. I don't think our maps are necessarily spam heavy, but I don't think we've shied away from it either. And I think that's a good balance that allows the maps to be viable as free-for-all maps, but potentially even viable for competitive maps, maybe even duel, depending on the size of the map, and most definitely team deathmatch.
Well, yeah, a lot of the old compilations of TDM maps were actually just regular deathmatch.
Yeah,
they weren't designed for TDM. Per se, like, oh, I'm gonna make a map for TDM. They just threw it for regular deathmatch. It just happened to work out. So a lot of the times, a lot of the maps that just throw off for FFA can be, utilized for something else. So that's the good thing about it too. And its exposure can be spread. Like, maybe it can be used in duel. It can be used in TDM. It can be used in LMS or something. But yeah, it's just kind of sad though. There's not really a lot of projects out for deathmatch. I know that was like a topic on Doom World for a bit, where some guy was like, "Hey, where all the good deathmatch wads at?" It's like, well, first of all, you missed like a whole decade. You're stopped at like the early 2000s, but yeah, it's true. There's really not that many packs coming out. I guess there's just a lot to play, so maybe people feel like, I don't really have any reason to make it. I don't know. It really depends. What I think, you're right. DM was one of the last ones. Rot Zone, something like that.
Yeah.
And I think it's just when it comes to free for all, I think people just kind of want to do something different after a while. Because I brought it up to UD, like kind of semi joking, semi seriously. It's like, hey, when you guys make the, UDMX2 or something? They're like, no, we're not interested. We actually tried and just dropped it some years ago. So,
yeah.
They were always one of the ones in the 2010s or the 2000s rather, where you get a release every few years with 1, 2, 3, and X. I don't know, Skulltag had its own deathmatch pack and people made stuff, but I don't know. I guess people maybe just wanted to do something different now. It kind of, at least for Zandronum, they're a lot more modding, oriented. So standard old deathmatch probably isn't really high on the priority list or totem pole, whatever.
No. Well, that's the other thing too. Like Zandronum also has a multitude of game modes that weren't previously available 20 years ago. I mean, the only game modes that you had at that time were cooperative, deathmatch, and duel. And then CTF came along and that got going. And then, so I mean, the game modes expanding have kind of hurt free for all too. I think that's definitely true. I also think that Zdaemon capitalized on having an experience point system that made people feel like their brainless gaming resulted in some sort of prize or some sort of
the old leaderboards.
Yeah, exactly. So it was, well, but I'm saying like it's goofy.
Yeah, I know. And everybody went through that grind for a little bit just to go up the leaderboards.
Yeah, so I mean,
Bazooka was up there for years.
Some people took it a little too seriously and were willing to cheat.
Oh, Hawkins?
Yeah, Hawkins. Yeah, man. Old Hawkins. Fucking running bots and experience servers.
Oh yeah, it's fucking stupid. Everybody's watching you when you're on the launcher. Why would you even do that?
No, that's just not. That's the epitome of not thinking.
No life in. Well, remember what's that name? Derida, the Russian that tried to sell his account just because he was number one.
Yeah, that guy was a weird fucking guy, man. He would always be like, "Hi," and I'd be like, "Hi, I don't know you." But then he'd be like, "Hi," and then like have these long conversations with me where he did all the talking and I said nothing.
Oh, that's fitting for somebody that wants to try to sell their account legitimately. He made that forum post like, "Yeah, I'd sell it first bid," or some shit like that.
For what?
Looked on, for money. He wanted to sell his account to somebody
for like $2.
Yeah, or something. Wow, I have this account that I didn't do anything. Like, nobody wants that shit.
Yeah, it's not League of Legends. Like, it's not fucking Elo. You're not gonna you're not gonna get the opportunity to meet pros doing it.
Yeah, they maybe some people lost the opportunity for like offering boosting services back in the day.
Oh god,
You know,
dude.
people would have done it too. Go
Oh
up to like
yeah.
the new
Fuck
people.
yeah.
Hey, I'll boost you to like 10,000 or whatever, or 1,000. Then play it like grind for like a month or whatever, and here you go.
They would have just gotten like a bunch of their friends to stand in a server and die for them
Yeah,
over and over. That's
yeah,
all they would
pretty
have
much.
done. So it's
I mean, well, people did that and they got caught too.
that's true, but that's considerably harder to prove.
Yeah,
But you know,
that's true. The stat system kind of just brought that life to free for all. So, like, I know NJ Front Crusher ran by Alex Max for a while. He had his own like stats for duel, I think, and there was not that many people that used it. Sadly, I mean, the site was like from straight out of like 1996, so that didn't help either.
no,
Like,
people don't care about stats like that unless they're like really uberly competitive.
or well, it wasn't not necessarily like the stats are bad, but it's just that the presentation was terrible. Like I
Sure.
said, it looked like it was like a 1997 where it's just like a table with like name and points or whatever. Like there was no like weapon usage or accuracy or whatever, the standard stuff you see today in all games.
You know, that's a good segue kind of into like that horde mode that Odamex has introduced. You know, given that Blair runs a lot of the stats on WDL, he also runs dueling stats as well that he posts. They could probably run like an experience system with horde mode. I mean, that's a big game mode that they're testing right now. It's a lot of fun. I think it needs a little fine tuning still. There's still a lot of monster desyncs. I think the random pickups and you not knowing what you're going to get when you pick it up is it's a little odd, but I don't know. They'll get better with it as time goes on. But I think that's something that they could do. They can introduce like an experience system, have some sort of leaderboards for the people that are topping the charts on the horde game mode. Maybe even introduce it to free for all. They've got the sites to do it. And I think that's one thing that's missing from Odamex is that Odamex doesn't have like a really good media or communications platform rather. Like they don't have a built-in IRC client. And while yes, everybody uses Discord, the reality is being able to launch your launcher and simultaneously get into a game but also have chat available. I mean, I think that's a big reason why Zdaemon took off. And then you had that, and then you had like noob friendly game modes like free for all with experience points. That's the type of stuff that draws a lot of new players in and keeps them around. And eventually maybe they stick around and they really like the game and they get into other things, maybe dueling, maybe CTF, maybe modding. And so I think that's a direction that Odamex should absolutely pursue. Now, I don't know what their plans are. I haven't really talked to Ralph or Blair about it or anybody else on the development team, but I was just putting out there if they ever consider it, they can say that I was the one that gave them the idea.
Well, I was gonna say about the Zdaemon thing, like yeah, the IRC thing helped a lot. It kind of connected everybody back in the day. So what, circa 2005?
Even
So,
before that.
oh yeah, they did have the IRC. I guess you're right.
I mean, early 2000s, like they had that.
Well, I mean, I think they integrated it with
1.06.
I don't
I
know.
think it was
Actually,
0.06.
maybe it was 0.06.
It might have even been 0.5, dude, like 0.05.
So that was like 02 or something like that, 03,
yeah.
4, whatever. So that was a benefit because it had everybody connected, not just through the servers, So that was actually a good move at the time. Then they shot themselves in the foot when they only let people with their client join. A lot of people did not like that and never use their service ever again. I don't blame them.
No, I don't either. That's silly.
Yeah,
but that's along the lines of what they do. They want control of their product, and that's what they're going to do.
Yeah, that's true. They can do it, and if you don't like it, then leave. Pretty much, which people did. But going back to Horde and stuff, yeah, I played it a couple of times. I'm not a single player guy, so I don't even like Doom single player much. It's okay, I guess. From my point of view, like I'm from the mold of just where, I came for the multiplayer, stay for the multiplayer. Really, it's fun sometimes. I don't play it a lot. I play it every now and then. I don't know what direction they're going to go with it because I see that they always talk about, do this and do that. Maybe we can improve this, improve that. So maybe with time it'll get a little bit better. Uh,
I think it
you know,
will.
I know the Zandronum Invasion. I never play that much either. I played Armageddon, a couple of times, or once rather.
Shout out to
It's
Armageddon.
it's actually fun. I actually enjoyed my time with that, and like I said, I'm not a single player guy, so if I enjoy it, it's probably a good something that's really good. So,
Oh yeah, well, it was ahead of its time. Armageddon was way ahead of its time. It was something. I mean, that was something that we were playing back in like 2011, 2010. So it's not as if like it's a new.
oh no, it's old.
It's
A lot of
old.
the other stuff, like was it Alpha, Beta,
Yeah,
Gamma, Delta, whatever the fuck it is.
yeah. It was still Skull Tag.
That too. Yeah, it was still Skull Tag
when we were playing it. So I mean, now unfortunately, it's got some issues where the I believe it's the Diabolus crashes the server. Yeah, if it's on Linux, I believe.
The fuck.
Yeah, Ru5tK1ng was the one who had because the Rampage folks are going to be running an event with that, and Ru5tK1ng was the one who pointed out, yeah, like the issue has been tracked down to a Linux issue, I guess, where the Diabolus will crash the server if it's a Linux server.
I don't even know how that's even fucking possible.
I don't either, but apparently it doesn't crash a server if it's a Windows server.
I wonder what's the function specifically. Like, there's probably something more to it. I don't know.
Yeah, like I'm sure it's something cheap. They're looking at doing some sort of patch for it, but fingers crossed. But I'm not sure what they're going to come up with. But it is a fun game mode. I'm with you. I like Horde. I think it's got some work to do. The map pack that they've put out so far is pretty decent, but I think they shouldn't be set on making this exclusively feel like Vanilla Doom. Like, there's nothing wrong with adding in custom monsters. You don't have to add in weapons that just feel foreign to Doom, but you can upgrade them. You can make them look better. You can make them feel better. You can make them more consistent. Because I mean, honestly, like even Armageddon didn't really do much. Like, instead of a chain gun, like you could get the minigun, and you could get a rail gun, and you could get like a rapid fire rail gun. And that was it. Those were the only custom weapons. Everything else was vanilla.
Yeah.
So I just hope as they continue to do testing, as they continue to navigate those waters, because for many of those folks, mapping for a game mode like that is quite a bit more advanced. A lot of them have really never stepped outside of, the deepest they've gone is Zdoom and Hexen. I think this is well past many of their mapping. Not that they're not capable of it, and not that they haven't, messed around with it, but I'm not familiar with any really advanced stuff that like Alex Max or Ralph or any of those folks have put out. And, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And to be clear, like, I'm not saying they're not capable, because they are more than capable of mapping in any game mode. They're very, very, very intelligent guys. They know a crap ton about the game, the engine, the exploits, how to map, how to mod. So it's not as if they couldn't figure it out. I just wonder if it's something that really has not been something that's interested them. But again, that's a conversation that they would have to have. And, if they ever want to have it, I'm happy to have it with them.
Though they do have some custom monsters, the Hackett stuff.
Yeah, so but it's like golden vanilla monsters, and they desync like fucking crazy because their movement speed is faster, and it looks really bad because they don't have extra frames, or, well, I guess it would be extra sprites actually to add in to make it look like they're going faster. So they keep like the vanilla sprites in, and they just look it just looks bad.
The Hackett stuff is really just relying on the standards that the modder set, or like modder's best friend 21 is pretty much like the specs for all the ports like Odamex and PR Boom, DSDA, and Doom Retro and all that. Like, they all kind of agreed on a spec and then implemented it. So that's what they did with their recent update. They're in spec with that. So that added a bunch of like capabilities that are, expand the Hackett. So it pretty much opens it closer to some of the things that you can do with Decorate, except like not entirely that you can do. It's like the early days of Decorate, I guess, somewhat. but it's not relying on anything Zdoom related. So uh, I think if you want like some crazy monsters and stuff like that, I mean, you're just gonna have to just work with what you have and hope there's a new update to a spec in a couple of years for something more
Yeah.
deep. But that's kind of just what you have.
They don't, like I said, they don't have to go over the top, but they can definitely make what they have now look cleaner, is my point.
Yeah, that's true. There's nothing wrong with trying. I mean, what think somewhat Style and a few others have been asking for like smooth sprites weapons on the server for like ever.
No, I like I said, I'm fine with them keeping like a vanilla oriented style. And to be clear, like they've already gone away from vanilla because it's horde mode. But
Yeah.
I understand that their goal is they don't want it to feel unlike Doom, which is fair. But at the same time, the point that I was just making was like you can add the extra stuff and it's not the end of the world. Now, whether the engine and the mapping are capable of handling that, that's a different discussion. But I think as it stands now, like the golden monsters are kind of like a cool idea. Like they're tankier, they have better stats. Just make it look better. That's all I'm saying. Just make it look better.
Add better AI or something.
Yeah, well, it just look like I said. I don't know if it's like desyncing or if it's just because they colored the original sprites gold, and now they're suddenly moving much faster. So it looks like they're skipping frames because there's not a sprite for a cyber demon walking that fast. Like the cyber demon was like slow.
Well, that's not really. That really doesn't have anything to do with it because you can go mess with Decker or anything, or even with the Hackett, I think. Well, and you just change the speed. They just speed to the same sprites. It's not like, oh, you need to add more sprites. That's not how that works.
Well, they didn't do that.
So the sprites are the sprite set. So they have the same sprites as the standard monsters, and you change the walking animation speeds and make it faster. It's just going to cycle through it faster.
Okay, so the sprite set fast. Well, it looks funny. All I'm saying is it looks funny.
It's probably too fast and not animated well. Because it will look goofy if you like look at fast monsters. It's the same idea. Look how they look when you have when you play with fast monsters, and
yeah, that's true.
When you port, they fucking jitter all over the place like Dastin or something.
Yeah. All right. So while we're on the topic of Odamex, and I think if there's going to be a hot take, it's going to be this one. Yeah. We'll get there. We'll get into it. We're about to shoot, brother. We're shooting like they do in those wrestling interviews. I want to be clear before we get into anything that the purpose of this conversation, the purpose of this podcast is not in any way, shape, or form to attack Odamex as a port. I think that Odamex has come a very long way. I am very happy with where Odamex is right now. All the capabilities. I think the gameplay feels really good. I think the render is phenomenal. It looks good. It looks smooth. It feels smooth. Good mouse of all the ports. It's got the best mouse code. But right now at this point, we are in the semifinals for Vengeance. And the player feedback for the port is not good. And there's no sugarcoating it. Now, of course, a lot of the UD guys and the Odamex guys are going to say good things. They're going to hold face and say it's fine, it's good. But even I'm kind of at a point where it's like, okay, we have to have a conversation about some of these inconsistencies. And I'm not talking about bugs because I absolutely expect there to be bugs. Like the corpse bug that used to be a thing in Zdaemon is now a thing in Odamex, which is fine. Zdaemon fixed it. I have absolute faith that Odamex development team will fix it. But the issue that everybody is having with this port right now, well, not everybody, but a lot what I'm hearing from several players, and it's not just our guys, it is a variety of players with a variety of backgrounds. The issue that everybody is having right now is they feel like if you have a laggy connection, you are operating with a superpower in Odamex. You are unhittable, or at the very least, it's very hard to get a clean shot off on you. And if there's any sort of collision whatsoever with you and a laggy player, good fucking luck. Your screen is going to go to hell. You're going to feel like you just had a stroke and a seizure simultaneously. And I still feel when playing the other ports that Odamex's super shotgun feels incredibly weak. It feels very ineffective from range. The shotgun feels very weak. And I don't know what that's a product of. I'm not accusing them of nerfing it. I think there's probably something going on behind the scenes that we don't know. I want to point out that it should be noted that what Odamex is trying to do is make the game fair for people from all over the world to be in the same server at the same time. It's difficult to do that without having some give and take for players on a better, more stable connection, or frankly, just a better location. So I acknowledge that what they're doing, there's going to be some side effects and consequences for that. And I've kind of just gone on a little rant where I buried the port. But again, I want to make it clear, if there's any development team that I trust in, it's Odamex's development team. If there's any leadership that I trust in, I trust Ralph's ability to take the mantle and really say, okay, like, we've got this new version 1.0, and now we've got the ability to see what's happening under the hood as it's happening. And now we can make adjustments. I'm also one of those players that if I have a complaint, I submit a demo for it if I think what I'm seeing is a bug or an issue. So I'm not just somebody that's sitting on the sideline yelling. I want to be an active participant and contributing to the betterment of the port. And I think that's a role that everybody should take up as well. I think if you're complaining about the port, but you're not submitting demos, you're not bringing it up with the staff. And to be clear, there's a way that you can do it too. Like, you can just say, hey, like, I'm having issues. And yes, those conversations will probably be tense at times, but there's a way that you can approach them that's not like, I'm going to blow the fuck up on them and cuss out their entire families. So long story short, I'm happy with 1.0. I think it's got a lot of upside. They're introducing a lot of new things to it.
You mean 10.0?
10.0, yeah. Sorry, I keep on saying 1.0. 10.0. Yeah. I'm happy with Odamex 10.0. But I think now is the time where a lot of these issues that players are talking about, the ineffective super shotgun, the players with lag shields, the collision that goes like crazy, the flag is another one, the 1 pixel high flag. I think this is a time where Odamex, the development team, needs to look and say, okay, what's going on? Because this is something a lot of players are saying. And I hope that after Vengeance, players constructively offer this feedback, or rather than just blow the fuck up on administrators. To be clear, at this point, I haven't said anything to Ralph, largely because I understand Ralph and the Odamex team are really busy right now. Once we get into the off season, I'm just going to go over some of the things that I felt like I was experiencing that were problematic. But right now, I'm going to wait a little bit while the season's going on, because I know what's about to come from the player base. It's probably going to be a shit show, and I don't want to contribute to that. I just hope, like I said, my hope is that people are constructive and are willing to be open-minded when they offer this feedback. So that's my rant, and now I shall let you talk.
Oh, where do I even start? How much time do we have? 2 hours, 4 hours?
We're pushing an hour right now,
I'm just messing with you. Well, I think if you start from the beginning with 10, nobody can't deny that it's better than it was 10 years ago with 0.6. But to me, I feel like history's kind of repeated a little bit, just not as severe. If we rewind back to 2012 when IDEO was here, everybody kind of tested with 0.5, and we're like, all right, because we were trying to move from Zdaemon. Of course, we've already went over that before.
Yeah.
And, the 3 seasons we had, it was just kind of the same things. It's just slightly worse. The bitching was worse because the bugs were worse and more current. The first 2 seasons were like, okay, we're not, Bones was like, all right, we ain't doing another season, like, immediately. So then the third and the final one of IDO on Oda, like there was work that had been done and it was a little bit better, but they still had some issues that, appeared during the season. It didn't help that the server upgraded to a beta version either, but that's besides the point. If it's coming from me, who was part of the board now, as somebody's playing the WO and Vengeance as a player, I can see both perspectives. On one hand, as somebody running shit, just like, yeah, you get tired of hearing people bitch it every fucking day. But as a player, like, you're tired of fucking dealing with bullshit every fucking day too. So you're stuck at a, impasse. In terms of like what people have been, talking, players, whether it's on Discords or the servers, yeah, there's definitely some stuff that's going on that just really hinders people from enjoying it. Like, I made a short list the other day about like some of the bad bugs that people run into, and it's like the weapon pickup bug, where you DC,
yeah,
you fucking fire and you get a fist, like that pisses everybody off. Because what if you're trying to do a return or you're in a duel or something, it's not going to cause you to lose, but the frustration of missing out on a play is going to piss you off. I've heard people say there's respawning with less than 100 health. I haven't had that happen to me yet, or I've not noticed, but people have said, yeah, that's a thing. Like, you respawn damage, like that's bullshit. People have had issues where the server just like shits and doesn't think you respawn. I know what happened to Dragon Despair or something. They send a demo in. I don't know if that's ever happened in a game, but that's, something to be aware of with somebody with higher, ping and latency.
Mm-hmm.
People have always had complaints with collision, I guess, like running into players, you jitter or you just get thrown around or some way. The dead corpse thing, the Zdaemon strikes back, that old fucking bug that we had back in the day is here now. People have seen like
the killer corpse.
The corpse running around with the flag and it's just firing at you, or it's in like various states of the animation. Maybe it's on its knees firing at you, or it's just dead on the floor firing at you. You can't see it. And then of course the thing that everybody's really like on the fence about is just you can't hit certain players no matter what you do. And there's, I don't really have too much trouble hitting everybody, but some people can say like, I cannot hit X or I can't hit Y. Everything just fucking goes through you. Why you? But I don't even know if that's anything that can be resolved.
Right. And it's subjective. Like, I don't even know. I don't know how you prove it. But I would also say that while I think Doom players have a long history of just bitching without offering any sort of objective proof or evidence to what they're saying, I also think there's truth in numbers. This is something a lot of players say they experience, myself included. I feel like there are some players that are just impossible to hit. And it's not anything that they're doing that's spectacular. They will run in a straight line. I will shoot at them and the shot will just go through them. And again, I don't think I'm missing. I don't think the shot is quote unquote dropping. I think what's happening is what I see and what's happening on the server are two different things. And interpolation, or whatever you want to call it, is trying to make it as good as it can possibly be. And that's where you have this disconnect. And frankly, because like I said earlier, with the fact that they're working on this approach that allows us to play with somebody from Morocco, somebody from Syria, somebody from what's a really far country away where they've got Brazilian players. A lot of Brazilian players typically have really high ping. And they allow us to all play together. There's going to be some give and some take. And this might just be something that is what it is. And there's not really a good answer for it. I'm not a developer, but I'm also a player and I notice these things and I've been around for a long time. And most definitely I am a player that doesn't make excuses. I'm not saying I'm losing games because of this. I'm saying that this is a bad experience I'm having and I'm not enjoying myself.
Well, like you said, it's not just like one player, two players, three loudmouths. It's a lot of players that say that, like, just like they can't deal with playing an extended period of time if they don't have to. Like you said, if they're gonna make claims without proof, then it's just like or whatever. But there is bug reports, like there's demos now. Like I followed a couple for people, and there was some that already existed with the issues. So this isn't like 10 years ago where there was like nothing documented. Like now there's actually demos of corpses and spawning and not, weapon desyncs. Like I was helping Alex for a week or whatever, trying to get some, information and get the bug out there with this testing build. And when you said that, oh, what you see is probably not what's actually happening. I mean, that's kind of true. Like I showed him the demo of where I was dueling you on sticks. So when I spawned, which one was it? Sticks one, right?
Mm-hmm. I don't remember. We have one of those maps.
The sticks with the BFG inside the little doors, the tunnel.
Yeah.
So I know the rocket launcher spawn by the exit door, like or near the spawn near the rocket launcher. Like, yeah. So I ran to the weapon desync because what happened is that I ran into you and the server's prediction or whatever moved me around the rocket launcher, even though I grabbed it on my end. So when I fired it, it didn't it didn't fire. So that kind of tells me that maybe there is some kind of weird stuff with collision and people being where they're not actually are, or seeming where they're actually not are. Like you say, maybe there's something else there, because that was that instance of why I didn't pick up the rocket launcher. That doesn't explain the instance of where I spawned at the beginning of a duel on top of an SSG, and when I fire the SSG, I have a fist. There's something else back there, but it's all documented now. So it's just pretty much a matter of time of them trying to figure it out. I just don't know if it's going to take longer than most people are willing to wait for, because honestly, like you say, like a lot of players are just like, ugh, this is bullshit.
I think they'll come back. I think that's the thing. Like the difference, I think, between Zandronum and Odamex and even Zdaemon is that the Odamex development team will interact with players more than the other ones will. Well, Zandronum does. I mean, Kaminsky does. I think Odamex has the best league of any of the NA ports, because of just the presentation of the WDL, the experience of the folks that are running the WDL. So that's really attracting to players to play in a league that's so organized and so well put together, with a good stream to boot as an arrow, and some other folks sometimes stream and they offer some pretty decent stuff too. But yeah, I mean, going back to your point, that's the thing, right? Like if what's happening on my end, what I see is not what's actually happening in the server, then the question becomes like, is the demo evidence that I submit even valid then? Because if what I see isn't what's happening, then I don't know. Like, how do you prove that? I'm just saying.
You have the debug stuff. Like I don't know. Honestly, I think they can just process which commands are being sent to the server and back and forth. So, I mean, what you see is, if what you see isn't actually reality, I mean, he was able to figure it out through my demo, because what I saw wasn't reality, or was it the other way around? Well, see, like I picked it up online, the server saw something else, but the demo had that. So yeah, I would probably say the demo should, in theory, going off that it should say, oh, well, the server thought this and you did that. So I think the demos are valid. So
yeah, and I hope that's the case. That's my concern, because like I have an example of something. I wish I didn't delete this demo, but like I said, right,
did you lose?
No, well, we were practicing and I was playing against AVC. And again, like I'm not calling AVC out as a player, but he's one that's notorious for lagging really bad. And we're playing on the new Smart CTF, and I'm chasing him and I'm shooting him with a shotgun. And the shots, like I mean, my crosshair is on him. I'm firing at him, and they just do nothing to him.
Was it the
They don't
shotgun or super SSG?
shotgun, the shotgun,
Oh, that's
and
because
it just does nothing. It was doing nothing. There were no blood splats, like nothing.
That's what everybody says though about the shotgun. It's just like a fucking shit gun.
Yeah.
Like that's somebody I talked to or in the server was like, oh, it only takes 4 shots. He's like, nah, you need 8 because the other 6 lagged out.
Yeah. I don't.
Everybody says.
And like I said, I am adamant about this, and I feel this way. I feel like there's something different about the Odamex Super Shotgun where it is not good from range. Whereas, and when I say range, I mean relatively, probably something around the area
higher mid range.
Yeah, right? Higher mid range, maybe like 500 to 600 units. Whereas in Zandronum and Zdaemon, I can regularly one shot from those ranges. On Odamex, I feel like I'm lucky if I'm doing 30 damage to a player.
Well, that's kind of interesting because people used to say that about Zandronum, like, oh, I can't fucking hit anything with Zandronum.
I felt that way with 3.0, and I feel that way with 3.1. I don't have those issues. And I never had that problem on Zdaemon. And I don't know what that's a product of. And at this point, like, I refuse to accept that it's something that I'm doing wrong, because I've gotten in really good shape and I'm able to duplicate this right now on other ports, but I can't do it on Odamex. Like, again, it's not that I want to make excuses for not being able to do something. I've adjusted my gameplay on Odamex for that. But I do see players do it too. So obviously it can be done. I just don't know what it takes. I don't know what it is. And a lot of players mention the same thing. It's the same thing. Like we were kind of talking about this earlier, where I feel like my style of aim on Odamex is never consistent. Like back in the day when I played Zdaemon and when I've played Zandronum, I never felt like my aiming had to change so much. Like I never felt like I had to think about aiming so much in those ports. I don't feel that way now in Zandronum and in Zdaemon. I played a couple of games of Zdaemon last night. I don't feel that way. I just point, click, shoot, it hits. Ta-da. But like in Odamex, I'm just like, I feel like I'm doing these like complicated formulas in my head before I even fire, because I'm like, I don't know if this is going to hit or not. And like I said, I think the mouse is good. I don't think it's an issue with the mouse. I just think there's an issue where what I'm seeing isn't actually what's happening. And as a result, it makes me feel like I'm missing or I have to change my aim. But what it really is it's like the server, the net code, whatever it is trying to do the best it can to put all these pieces together, and it's coming up short. And I don't know, like I said, this is purely speculative, by the way. And eventually I'm going to have Ralph on, and I'm sure he'll want to address it. And I welcome him to do so, because maybe he can give a much more thorough answer, good explanation behind that. But for me as a player, that's an experience that I have that's frustrating for me. And I don't know.
Guys have had that too. You know, somebody earlier said, oh, no matter how much you fine tune your mouse, it's never going to feel consistent. And I had Strangle play. I talked to him the other night in Discord and said, oh, you should, just kind of play the ports a bit. They all like updated, and it's been a while since you dueled or whatever. So he played Zdaemon, said, oh, it felt fine. Just kind of readjusting the plane. Played Zandronum, mouse a little sensitive, fixed my values, pretty much fine. Okay, nothing too crazy. He plays Zandronum, just not Doom. So I said, oh, try Odamex. And it's been a while. He had the old version 0.95 or whatever 4. And his takeaway was like, I don't know. He said basically like it feels strange, like the mouse just doesn't feel like the other two. Like there's just what he says, like it feels like at times when I do this certain maneuvers, the mouse is fine. And then when I do certain other maneuvers, it's faster. It's not what I expected, basically. Yeah. And this is coming from somebody who doesn't really play anything anymore. So he doesn't have like he doesn't play competitive Doom anymore. So he doesn't have any like gauge other than memory. So he's starting kind of fresh. So he plays all 3. And it's like, I can adjust to 2, but this third one, like, why am I struggling with it? It shouldn't make sense. Like you get your values more or less close, you should feel like consistent in some way, but even he's having the same issues that other players who play this sport, more often, have the same complaints. I'm not quite sure what the deal is with that. I know you mentioned the shotgun. Everybody call like I said earlier, it's a shit gun. Some people even say the chain gun's pretty bad too. I think chain gun's
okay.
fine.
I think the chain gun's fine.
Chain gun used to always, with it. When Oda first came out, everybody used to say, "Oh wow, the chain gun's fucking good." So I don't know, maybe it's just lag, but the shotgun fucking bad.
Yeah,
and you're talking about like good players saying that. It's not like somebody with 200 ping that just kind of plays okay. Like you had like players like Ninja Dog, who fucking his SSG is automatic. When he gets the SG and it's not even semi-automatic, it's fucking like dying the engine and shit.
Yeah.
It's like I hit you 4 times and you still live and you didn't have armor. Like what gives, So yeah, that's just the player like experience now for a lot of them, and it's kind of just like the old days a little bit where you got the players that complain and stuff, and then you got the developers, or not developers, people running stuff to say, oh, well, if you don't, if you already know what the deal is, then don't sign up. I mean, I can understand like you're tired of hearing it, but I don't know if that's like the best thing to tell people.
No,
don't play.
It definitely, it's not what you want to be telling people. That's the truth.
I didn't tell people, we didn't tell people that in IDL when they were complaining. We just try to like calm them down and try to understand what's going on. Everybody kind of felt it at that last season. You really couldn't deny it. Remember, like we said before, even Dude just had enough when he had some shit happen to him in his match. So it's like the PR mask kind of falls off a little bit. But yeah, I think there's definitely some legitimacy to the problems players are having. But some of those things are just kind of hard to document, like like you said, you should have kept the demo and submitted it, like fine tune, go over with a fine tooth comb. Maybe there was something that happened. Maybe he slammed into somebody, a teammate, and that threw off his course on the server or something, who knows?
Yeah.
I know that I took a picture of a screenshot because I was practicing. I think it was against your team or something. And I shot at you, and yeah, you kind of like moved at the last minute, but my puff was like all on the fucking right side. I was like, what the fuck is this shit? Like,
yeah,
like none of the other shots of that practice bothered me. Nothing, like nothing caught my attention. It's like whatever, but that was so absurd that I remembered it. So I had to go look back, and I was like, what the fuck is this shit? It's like a shock, and it's only one barrel working. It's not like something I see a lot, but some players do. So how can you really like fix it? I don't really know. I'm not too well versed in their net code.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. And I'm sure if you just lined up and like had a player stand still and you tested these theories across all the different ports and compared them, it would all look the same. But it seems to be something that's happening like in the middle of a game where as players, we cannot reliably adjust. Like we can't adjust our aim for this situation the way we can on other ports. It just feels like it's not reliable. Like I said, I don't know what that's a product of, but I know Odamex feels very different. I guess that's the best thing I can say. I'm not going to, I kind of speculated with like interpolation earlier. I'm backing off of that because I don't know if that's it. I don't know what it is. All I know, I think Strangle probably, your example with Strangle rather probably explains it really well. Something's just off. And I don't know. So like, that's the thing. Like when I submit a demo, if I tell them, well, I feel like this shot should have like done more damage or killed them from this range, they're going to say, well, it didn't because you missed. And then my retort is, well, it does on other ports. And what am I supposed to say to that? And like, what are they supposed to say to me when I say that? That's the thing. Like, I don't even know how to constructively provide this without it probably feeling like to them, like I'm just making like nonsensical complaining, but I don't feel like I am. I'm just telling you, like, this is what I'm experiencing. And this is how I feel. I was one of the best players in the world for the better half of a decade. And I'm telling you something's not right. I don't, sometimes we can't put things into words, and sometimes it's difficult for us to define what it is. But it's something a lot of players are saying, and a lot of very good players are saying.
Yeah, it's not like just like random guys that just barely started playing like a month ago. These are veteran players and very good players, the top players of today, or in the top players of tomorrow, because a lot of players, are good right now in terms of CTF.
Yeah.
So it's not like you got a bunch of just like scrubs running around. You got people who can aim consistently and run to these things, whether it's Dastin Ninja Dog Ed or, whoever else. That's just how it feels. And I don't know. It's one of those things where I probably would say that after Vengeance, there probably needs to be like a serious session of trying to find, iron out these bugs, because I don't think that if they run something else, that maybe a lot of players won't sign up just because they're soured from it. Because you have to think about it. When we told everybody that, we fixed a lot of the bugs and things should be different, it was on us back then in the third season of the IDO back in 2013. It was kind of our fault for trying to give that false reassurance, because, a lot of bugs did get fixed, but not enough. So I'm not saying that anybody's saying, we fix a lot of those things and it's better than ever. It's kind of just implied when you make your, forum posts like, we fixed a bunch of stuff. And some players say, it's a lot better. And then, it's a lot better, but it still has some rough edges around there. So, I mean, that's just kind of the expectation players have, when there's a new update and things have said, we fixed this, fixed that, added this, added that. And then they run into some old stuff, So I don't know. I think it's probably for the best interest of their port to fix a lot of those things that I listed earlier that are on the tracker, because if they don't soon enough, I mean, maybe not a lot of people probably sign up for, WDO or Vengeance or whatever. Maybe it'll inspire somebody to do something else, that may be a detriment to their to them.
Yeah. I mean,
it is what it is.
I just think it's, I mean, knowing the Doom community the way I do, I think it's going to get ugly. Well, unfortunately, I do. I think the people are just going to bitch. I think, and again, like I love Ralph to death. I respect everything that he has done. I don't think he's Kilgore, but I think we're all human. And when we just get nothing but bitched at nonstop, eventually we're going to slip up. And the moment he slips up, and it might be once, despite hearing thousands of complaints, it might be one that finally makes him slip up and say something that sets a whole community off. I don't know.
It could be anybody, really.
I hope that doesn't happen. I hope it doesn't. And I'm not naming Ralph as like this antagonist or this protagonist.
He is the bad guy. Kilgore was right. Don't ever forget that.
Because again, but there is going to have to be something that happens. And like I said, during the off season, when I have a little bit more time, I would absolutely be interested in submitting demos and looking at how to submit stuff to bug trackers more consistently for things that I feel are bugs, because I do like Odamex. Like I said, we just spent this last 30 minutes practically burying the port, but the reality is,
I don't think it's necessarily buried, because it's just reality.
Yeah.
It's not like any of the shit just made up. We decided to nitpick some small things and stretch them out. These are things that are legitimate problems that people can attest to. Sure, I guess bury, but still, it's what's reality. You can't just deny reality and expect, la-di-da. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
I know some people kind of get emotionally attached to, the port or whatever, and then, they take it the wrong way. But I mean,
we want what's best.
You just gotta not do that. It's just, I know it's hard to not get attached to something, but you can't really just take it personally.
No. And I'm not this isn't in bad faith. This whole thing is not in bad faith. I want what's best for Odamex. I want Odamex to succeed. But it needs work. I mean, there's no other way around it.
And it's kind of interesting because I know how we kind of gave Zandronum kind of crap for like ignoring PvP, focus on modding. But if you go back to like messages and or statements, Odamex's goal isn't necessarily to make all you guys happy or all us happy.
No, it's not.
Their goal is to make the Doom experience into a more modern world with having it on all these systems and keeping demo compatibility and fixing a lot of the single player stuff so people can play it. They want to focus on that aspect of it, not necessarily like, oh, well, I know they used to say we're setting the standard in competitive play, but that was only because for a time that was its best, aspect. But now they got more of the, survival and their own version of LMS, and they have Horde, so they're kind of got more things to work with. So that's their focus, it's more about the experience and stuff, not necessarily to make the top CTF league or whatever. Or so I don't know, it's weird. It's kind of like Zandronum.
Yeah.
It's not like this pour solely for PvP and we're going to put our effort into it, because they don't. Like, if you look at the tracker and the fixes they do, it's for a lot of different things that may not necessarily pertain to CTF. But like you said, there's things that need to be adjusted or fixed. And, it's just a matter of them doing it whenever they get around to it. And, either you wait or you don't. That's all you can really do.
Right. Well, and I mean, is it too soon? Is it too extreme to say that Odamex is perhaps at a crossroads right now? Like, this can be fixed, and this could be very good for the future of Odamex. The future is bright. You've got these new game modes. You are finally you've got this debug where you can see all of these issues now clearer than you've ever been able to see. So maybe you can finally get a handle on all of these issues that competitive players complain about. You get some of these things smoothed out and ironed out, and all of a sudden you've got unquestionably the best port. Or
for PvP.
Yeah, for PvP. Or it gets worse and nobody wants to play on the port ever again.
Oh,
I'm again, like, I don't want to ring the doom bells. No pun intended.
We thought that back then when we left and nobody was going to play it ever again, but they still had,
they came back.
They still have people when he ran WL, people that went to it because it's a well-run league, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe some of these things are easier said than done, like to fix them.
Sure.
But like it's just that there's just no way around it. Like, they need to fix it before they run WDL. That's all there is to it. And if they don't, well, they don't.
Yeah.
People will sign up. If they don't, they'll find something else to do.
I think people will sign up. I think people are going to sign up because WDL is such a well-run league. Like, I don't think it's going to be because people love Odamex. It's because they love WDL. And again, like, that's why it's just like, it's such an interesting state right now. And let's be fair, they did just release 10.0. And whenever you release a new version, a big version, I know they didn't do a ton of work to 10.0 like they had done with previous versions. There are going to be unforeseen things. And we did test a lot, and we did help. The ghost bug is something that we diagnosed right away and we got fixed. I think the corpse bug is probably something similar to that, and they'll get that fixed. And like I said, for the last how many ever minutes now at this point that we've been kind of just throwing dirt on Odamex, I trust their development team. I just do. I think they're going to get these issues fixed. I think as long as people are willing to submit some sort of objective evidence and not just, show up in an Odamex Discord saying you all are fuckwats and you all have tiny dicks and you guys made me lose.
I don't think anybody's done that.
I think as long as, I'm just saying, like, as long as there's decorum, like, as long as there is civil conversation, it's going to get tense. There's no denying that. But as long as the goal is to be constructive and not to be confrontational, I think it'll be fine. And like I said, I think they've got the team in place to do it. But they have to do it. Like that just has to happen at this point. And I think the future is bright for Odamex, but I think right now it's just they're running a league literally right after they released a version. You almost had to know this was coming. History has told us time and time again this is going to happen.
Yeah,
right?
I know. I even made the comment. It's like, oh shit, like that's probably not gonna be that great of an idea. And they're like, oh well, you know, it is what it is. You don't sign up. I'm like, well, fuck. I'm just saying, like, don't fucking take it all personal. I'm just saying, like, you know what's gonna happen when you finish, you know, releasing it. You know, like I said, like I have to tell them, like, I'm not fucking attacking you. I'm just taking a statement. Like, it's gonna, people are gonna be unpleased about it. And you know, if you tell them, oh well, then they don't want to sign up. Like, okay, if you say that, they're fucking not going to sign up.
Yeah.
You know,
well, you never like we've already said that. You don't want to say that. It's never something
you're not going to have the quality matches with top players. You know that you're to expect with that.
And
kind
be
of
real,
attitude.
you're not producing new players either. So it's not as if you have anything allure. Like to your port, there's nothing else that allures that makes people want to play your port other than your competitive leagues, because you're not making new players. You're not bringing in new players. You're taking new players from Zdaemon and from Zandronum. That's your new players are coming from those ports. Now with Horde, with some of the co-op stuff, with some of the survival stuff, I think they'll start generating more new players, but
not for PvP though.
But yeah, it's going to be a long time before they generate players that will convert to PvP as a result of sticking around for some of the other game modes, because they just don't have the sheer, like, for every, back in the day, like when we were all noobs, probably for every 50 players that went into a co-op server to like spam co-op build or spam one of like the wacky
co-op games, Alien Vendetta or something.
You know, for every 50 players that did that, maybe one or two converted to PvP. Odamex doesn't. They don't have those numbers. They're not creating those players. And that's kind of just where it's at. But you know, I think the last point I want to make about this too is that I absolutely believe in Odamex's staff. I've said that time and time again. But I also think that whether we like it or not, Vengeance is going to provide very good data for them. And people get bent out of shape about that because they say, well, they're just using us as guinea pigs. Well, let's be real with ourselves, Doom players, PvP Doom players, competitive multiplayer Doom players. We've been guinea pigs for the last 30 years. We have been, because there has not yet been a final released product for any of these ports. They are constantly in development. They are being coded and created by people who are not getting paid to do this. And if they are, they're getting paid very little. So it's our responsibility as players to understand kind of like this unwritten social contract that we have with developers. We are guinea pigs. Yes, we are. And when we play in these games and in these leagues at the highest level, the one thing they can't accuse us of is being bad players that are just missing shots and not being good at the game. When all of us are coming, or a large majority of us are coming together and saying, hey, man, something feels off, they can't ignore it either. So that's kind of like that social contract that we have in society, that, hey, we'll follow these unwritten rules, these unwritten laws, because it's serving the greater good of society. It's kind of the same philosophy here. We're willing to be your test subjects as we play in these leagues because we're competitive players and you're providing content for us to do that. But in exchange, you have to listen to what we have to say, as long as, you know, the communication is in good faith. Isn't always, but neither is communication from developer side. That's been traditionally a Zdaemon problem. I don't think that's been so much a problem with Odamex, but it has happened, I'm sure, as any long-standing port will have those issues. So we'll see. That's all I can say. I can tell you this: I'm not going to be one of those players that's like, oh my God, I'm never touching Odamex again. I will be playing in the WDL next season. I will continue to play Odamex just like I'll continue to play Zandronum. I'm going to try to play Zdaemon more, and I'm going to be happy. And that's where I'm at. I think Doom's still in a good place, despite the fact that this has been probably a more negative take about where Odamex is at. But I think it's been a truthful take, and I think it's something that both you and I are saying in good faith, and we're not saying this just because we want to rag on people that we don't like. You and I both have an enormous amount of respect for Ralph and for those folks over at the development team at Odamex. So I hope if and when they listen to this, they understand that this is not coming from a place of malice. This is just two players that have a long competitive history that are saying, something doesn't feel right.
Well, I was gonna bring your point, like, you forgot about like the final product. You forgot about the remember the God Touch Zdaemon 1.8.3. You remember that for a while? But everybody was like, that was the best version. We should.
No, it was not. No, it was
that lasted
not.
for like all of like 2 days or something.
Just like the people who still hold on to 1.8 in general, like that was the best version of Doom. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't.
I prefer 7 over that, but that's just me.
I don't like. We're just advancing. Like the game is changing. You know, I'm not crazy about the unlagged, but Doom, the competitive community, is not as big as it used to be. So none of these regions are probably big enough to hold events on their own without players from other regions. And when I say regions, I mean very far away places like Brazil, so South America, Europe, the Middle East. So that's just going to be a way of life now. We just have to accept that. Can it get better? I don't know, but that's where we're at. And yeah, I just don't want to cling to the past. I think that's stupid. Where we're moving forward, that's where we are. Those were fun times on Zdaemon back in the day, but this isn't Zdaemon. And that port had a lot of issues too. There's a lot of wonky shit that happened in that port too. So let's slow our rolls before we lionize an old and outdated and archaic version of Doom that is in the past, and rightfully so.
That kind of brings up something, but I'm just gonna say one last thing about the Oda and then move on from that. I think how Xandro had a little improvement from 3.0 to 3.1. I'm pretty sure, like I'm fairly confident they'll improve from to 10.1 or whatever it is. It's just a matter of it being done. But when you mention like clinging to the past and stuff with 08, it kind of brought up something that I had noticed sometime recently, or maybe before as well, where I know a lot of the current players usually kind of talk about old times and old players and kind of just shit on them, like, oh, they weren't that great, and I don't see anything impressive. Like everybody could beat them, if they came in. And I don't know. I think that's just kind of silly for a bit. It's kind of like sports, like you watch NBA, right?
Yeah, of course.
Like how everybody always says, "Oh, could the Bulls survive today? Could Magic Johnson be a top point guard today? Could Kareem Abdul, Jabbar, could he be a top force with his sky hook? What about Bill Russell? What about Wilt Chamberlain? Could have LeBron survived in the 80s? It's just ridiculous. It's like, it's no lie that the meta of CTF and PvP evolves. Like nobody's still playing the fucking thing like it's 1999. Everything evolves and changes as time goes on. So you can't expect, this is how it's always going to be played. Like everything's always, back in 2003 when CTF came out, nobody knew anything about rocket jumping like they do now.
Couldn't even jump at first.
Yeah, probably. I don't remember. I wasn't there then. But, I just think it's kind of just silly. It's just like there was a reason why these guys were great players or top players, because they learned and adapted. Like, it's not like they just just kind of got lucky. Maybe a couple, but most of them, yeah, they were smart and adapted and changed to like DX. They kind of helped evolve that whole just like stupid pub style playing that clans were doing in the mid to late 2000s to kind of doing more team-based, more coordination, and other clans, did that too, like UDNR. And it just kind of evolved throughout the 2010s. And now, like, a lot of people have good communication, and it's just the way it is now. People are more flexible in how they approach the maps.
Yeah, it's far more refined.
But yeah, it's more refined. I wouldn't, count out players like No Star or Chewy or anything.
Oh, the greats would adapt. They would adapt.
Yeah, they would have adapted. Like,
they would have adapted.
Like, oh yeah, they probably would barely like get 10 fracks today. It's like, I don't know.
No, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
It's just silly. It's just a way for like people to protect their ego because they just don't want to give other people props,
Yeah.
I think it's just like ridiculous. It's like, I don't know. I just roll my eyes whenever I see that. It's like saying, Magic Johnson couldn't survive in this 3-point error. I'm like,
well, he probably would have just developed a 3-point shot, but back then he didn't need one. Yeah, and exactly. You're right. It's subjective.
It's the same thing.
It's all and it's like it's people that speak like that are people. Well, and I would say the inverse of that is the people who say, well, the old timers would dominate today. It's the same thing. Exactly. Like we don't. First and foremost, we don't know because it's not happening. Second of all, I have to assume that the things that made people great back then are still going to be things that make them great now. They're adaptable, they learn quickly, and they have a drive to be competitive and want to win. Those things would drive them to continue to be great in this era. How great could they be? I have no reason to think that they wouldn't be able to compete and adjust now, the same way many of us have come back and are able to compete now. I wouldn't say I'm a top 30 player at this point, but I'd say I'm serviceable. But I'm also playing on a part-time basis. If I was playing full-time, who knows? But I don't go down that rabbit hole because it's stupid.
It's true. Like, you can't say like, they dominate. I wouldn't say they dominate either. I think they just be top players too. They were top then. I don't see why they wouldn't be top now.
They'd be contenders to be top the same way they were then.
Exactly.
And if they didn't, they didn't. That doesn't make them any less great, because that's the thing. When we look at history, and this is something I was going to say earlier, you are very narrow-minded if you're comparing things now to the past and using today's timeline as a reference for the culture and the context then. You can't, because times have changed. Things are very different now. The game has changed. The meta has shifted. A lot of these kids grew up with computers from the day that they were walking for the first time, whereas many of us didn't. We still went outside. Like, we knew what being tanned felt like. So it's different. There's so many things that are different. And the only thing we can do is we can look at it for the context of the time that it was in. For the time that No Star was in, he won 4 championships and he was constantly winning. He is unquestionably one of the greatest CTF players ever. Does that mean No Star would dominate today? I don't know. I don't. But you can't take away what he did in his era. The same way that we don't say that Bill Russell was trash because he competed against a bunch of white dudes who couldn't jump. We don't take that away from him. 11 championships is 11 championships. That's insanity. Now, there are some guys that I think are so ahead of their time that they can traverse to whatever timeline. I think Wilt Chamberlain would compete in any era.
Yeah.
You don't have to take him out of his, you could take Wilt Chamberlain back then and put him in today's game and he'd be a 25-10 player.
Yep.
As was. Bill Russell, probably not. But do I think Tim Duncan is evidence that Bill Russell would have been successful. Fundamentally strong, a winner, competitive, adaptable. So I have no reason to think that Bill Russell wouldn't have adapted. Now, I don't know how great he would have been. I don't. That's why it's when we have these conversations, when we talk about people in the past, I don't know. It's odd to me to shit on players back then, especially if they're players that haven't done anything to you now. It's a little bit different for us because our predecessors did nothing but antagonize us. Whereas
we antagonized them back too. Don't forget that. It was
but
great.
I have nothing good to say about them because they were shitty. But I feel like the vast majority of us as older players were not that way to newer players. In fact, I think many of us were the opposite. We tried to pass on what we learned. We tried to be, somebody that kind of passed on the torch because we spent so much time in this. I didn't spend all that time in Doom just to watch it go up in flames. I wanted the next players to be better than I ever was and take this thing to another level. That validates me if they do that. You know what I mean? Like, that makes it worth it for me if they do that. So I'm so happy that they're better. And you know what? I think as a competitor, you should absolutely have that mindset that you're better than everybody. But if you're talking about having a serious conversation and understanding the differences between times, then it's stupid of you to say, oh yeah, I would have dominated Chewie. And by the way, Chewie was one of those players who would have traversed time. Chewie would be dominating today. Not everybody was Chewie. That's absolutely true. And Chewie maybe necessarily wouldn't have been as dominant in CTF, but unquestionably he would have been dominating in duels. And sorry, like that's probably just true.
I mean, I know some people say it as memes, but there's some that actually mean it. It's just like I said, it's just a way to bring others down and bring yourself up, and it's just ridiculous.
And by the way, like when I say Chewie, that's just like the first example that comes to my mind. It could be anybody.
Oh, I mean, Lowell, here's one that's more recent. Like Genova hasn't played for years. He's pretty much gone. Do you think that if Genova came back in 4 years, he wouldn't be a great player again?
If Genova came back today and committed, he would probably be the best runner in the game.
Or at least top 10, not 5.
Top 5. But what I know of him, what I know he's capable of, if Genova came back today and committed to this game and gave it his all, he would be the best runner because he was one of those players that traversed time. I don't think No Star is one of those players. But I think players like Genova, like Chewie, like J-Kist, I think those are players that were. Devastation was one. Dev has shown it time and time again that he does. Now, Dev was never renowned as a CTF player, but he continues to win just about every fucking duel thing that's out there. Who's stopping him? Who's beating him? Yeah. And if your excuse is, well, I could beat him, and you're a newer player, well, guess what? You haven't stepped up and done it. So,
yeah, well, going back to Genova, like I'm saying, like there's a more recent example. Like it's just silly to think that they wouldn't adapt.
Yeah, they would adapt, but it's a conversation that you have to have, like, honestly, and you have to have with proper context. And if you don't, then you're just basically going to have the young whippersnappers that are hungry, young lions that want to destroy everything versus the old geezers that are mad at everybody and have that get off my lawn complex.
Oh, DUI.
Yeah, exactly. And it's neither perspective at that point is going to be valid. So I don't go down that rabbit hole. I mean, we talked about it a little bit. I think the only rabbit hole I maybe went down was like I said, there's those exceptional players that would have been good no matter what era they're in, like LeBron, like Michael Jordan, like Wilt Chamberlain. Doesn't matter what era they were in, they would have been great in any era. And then there's some guys that maybe wouldn't have been, like let me think of like a good NBA player.
Current?
Well, just I'm thinking more like the past.
Oh, John Stockton.
Stockton would have been good in today's NBA. I mean, he wouldn't have been an NBA All-Star consistently because he wasn't the shooter that a lot of these point guards, and he was a decent shooter. But like he wasn't athletic the way that they were. I don't know. Like maybe Scotty, like even somebody like Scotty who had like a good mid-range game. But I know a great Chris Mullin. Chris Mullin
Pacers?
was well, he was Chris Mullin. He was Warriors for most of his career, but he was basically just a spot up shooter. And back then it worked. You could score a lot like that. But now he wouldn't have been as dominant because defenders are too athletic at defending the three and defending long range, whereas they weren't back then because not everybody could shoot like that.
Yeah.
He would have still been an effective player, but he wouldn't have been in the All-Star league, several times. I think he would have struggled to make All-Star appearances. But I don't know. This is, and again, like people might hear me and say that's blasphemy, but again, like we're illustrating a point of how complicated this is.
I will say though that segueing into like newer players and stuff, there have been new faces popping up, at least to me, that are like, that have been playing for like less than 5 years that are pretty, top players now.
Sure.
You see them in Vengeance, and you probably, you saw them last season in WDL, and you're probably going to see a few more next season. I don't know. Vengeance, if you want to like talk about like leagues and stuff, like Vengeance, I don't know. I think most people kind of had a little mixed opinion about the format they ran with this time.
Oh, the 2 weeks. I would never do it again. I know some people liked it, but I will never do that again. 2 weeks in two games in 1 week is too much. I'm not trying to play that much a week.
Yeah, I know Chain was like, he loved it because it worked with a schedule, but it's still a lot of like prepping.
Yeah. It's more than I'm willing to do.
To me, it feels just like an extended tournament,
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like the same as like the leagues because you don't have that team chemistry build up as much as you would. Like, let's say if in the regular season of like whatever, the ODO, if it was like a 5-week season in playoffs, by week 4 or 5, you kind of start feeling like, oh, the wheels are like well oiled and everything's smooth and going. You only get 2 weeks to like try to even get near that, and some people just didn't.
Yeah.
Like I think like I said before, the meta for going into this is like, all right, who do I want? What kind of team do I want? Can I get them? And what map can we play?
Yeah.
That's just how you do it. And some captains didn't do that very well. Some captains didn't pick a map that benefited their team. They just were trying to like take a map so another team couldn't pick it as home field, which is questionable. Just I don't know. I kind of like it because it gets a lot of games over with quickly, but at the same time, maybe a little too quickly.
I lost too much damn sleep doing this.
I've just been helping practice, and I only play like once, so
yeah.
To me, doesn't really affect me that much. My schedule, I wasn't really playing anything until I signed up randomly, so like I wasn't invested too much into it, but I have been trying to like kind of get in some shape so I can help the team practice, because that's all I can really offer at the moment. I wasn't playing regularly. Like after WO, I just stopped playing. Like
ride your way to a championship.
I don't care. I'm not that invested in like playing anymore. Like I said, I don't even play casually anything. I just like show up and play whatever and not play.
Boomer.
That's what I feel about it. I have other things I want to do.
That's fair.
I want to like, once this vengeance is over, I want to focus on doing other things, my own personal life, that I don't have to set away hobby time for this,
I don't
That's
mind.
just me personally.
I don't mind. It's a love of the game, so I continue to play. So,
but in terms of vengeance, it's fun. It's a cool format. They probably do something different next time, though.
Just go back to 4-week regular seasons. There's no reason to change it.
Yeah, I mean, was the WDL's 5 weeks, right? So
5 weeks.
I don't know if you're ever really going to see those old 8-9 weeks again anymore. I don't think people want to play that much as often as they play. It's a little bit different when you dedicate to like 2 months, over 2 months of league play. It's a bit different.
Yeah, I don't think we'll see them again. Number one, there's too many leagues.
I don't think so. How many? There's only WDL and
WDL,
whatever.
DML, Vengeance,
Well,
and then
Vengeance.
there's
I don't.
all of these events in
Well,
between them.
I wouldn't consider. Like I said,
I'm saying
Vengeance.
people would get burnt out on like a 9-week regular season league
Yeah,
and
I
turn around
know.
and play another league.
But I'm just saying, like in terms of leagues, there's only really two. But yeah, you're right. They play other stuff. They're gonna get like tired because it was tiring even for us, and they didn't have a lot of options,
bro.
Because nobody was really doing Zandronum at anything or Skull Tag. Didn't have anything like that at the time, and even that shit was fucking tiring for us.
Listen, we played WDL. That ended in July. I played in QuakeCon, and then I played in Take the Crown, which I think was in September. Then I disappeared from Doom for 5 months because that was too fucking much.
Well, I only played in like WDL, then I did the QuakeCon thing because I like LMS, and that was it. I didn't play Odamex for anything after that.
Oh shit! By the way, shout out to me, QuakeCon 2021 champion right here. Yeah.
That was just luck. Fuck that map.
Fuck you.
Well, my partner was like,
you have to call me world champion.
I got a piece of shit. Like, well, not piece of shit, but I got some the energy drinks. I kept one and drank one or whatever and gave the rest to somebody else.
Oh,
that was my prize.
Yeah, I got that that Kraken cool the liquid cooler that's still sitting in the box and I haven't opened it.
Yeah, at least I won something, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't. The problem is I already have a liquid cooler on my system and I don't really need it, so I'm not motivated to open it up and scratch off the cool the cooling system, add more paste and all that shit and fuck around with it.
Yeah, just
and
keep it as a backup.
Yeah, exactly, and make sure that there's room. And I have the room, but I would have to adjust stuff inside of my desktop. I'm just not fucking motivated to. And frankly, if somebody came along and said, I'll give you $100 for it, I might be inclined to just give it to them. It's at the time it was valued at 180. I'm sure it's cheaper now. I don't know. I'll just keep it. Whatever. I'll put it in at some point. I just have to stop being lazy.
But yeah, just sell it or keep it, whatever. But going back to the league play, yeah, the one thing I did like about the long seasons was you just saw a lot of teams just come together. Their chemistry was top notch.
That's true, for sure.
You don't really get to see that much with everybody.
I don't know. Because I feel like a lot of these players played together in other leagues and played together in other events all the time too.
I guess that's true. When we played, not everybody like joined together, played a lot together. So I guess
hated each other.
Yeah.
A lot of us hated each other. And when the league was over, we couldn't wait to get away from each other.
Yeah.
So
that still happens today too. So, but not as bad.
Yeah. But then we come back and we fucking butt heads with each other again in some other league or some other server.
But yeah, I guess so. Thinking about it that way, it's probably for the best to keep it short.
And short-ish, like 2 weeks is a little too short, but yeah.
No, I'm talking about WDO. 5 weeks.
Oh, I don't think there's any desire for them to go more than 5 weeks. I think if they could get 12 teams, maybe they would consider a 6-week regular season. But even then, I think they like their 5-week setup. A lot of players like their 5-week setup. 6 weeks, I know it would only be one more week, but even 5 weeks felt like a burden.
No, I didn't think 5 was too bad. I felt like it was just not. I could have used an extra week. I think personally, I could have gone another week before playoffs. But that's just me. Some people maybe just want 4 and be done with it.
Well, you heard it here, folks. WDL staff, 6-week regular season advocated by Rust.
They're not going to do that.
For by Rust. Well,
it's only if they're going to have like 10 or 12 teams.
I don't think they'll have any problem getting 10. I think
how many was there last season?
There was 10.
Yeah, they were close to 12.
Yeah, they could have had 12, but they didn't want to have a watered down league. But I think at some point,
well, they also wouldn't have had a free agency to pull from either.
They would have, but it would have been very small.
Like 3 players.
Yeah. Which is not reliable. You would have had to have had like a fluid free agency pool, basically. But I think at some point they're going to need to take a chance and go to 12 so that they can get a lot of these players who don't get any game time some sort of gameplay. I would be interested in seeing a regular season where you have like teams that had like 2 good players and then like 1 shit player. Like that would be fun.
Isn't that what we do now?
No. No, most teams have 3 really good players now.
Yeah, I know. That was the thing back then. You had that unproven rookie.
Yeah. Shit, back then it was whatever team was the most stacked usually won. Not unlike now so much, but I don't think it's as bad now because I think the overall meta is far more competitive now. The skill floor is much higher than it used to be, and the ceiling is too. So I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it, but
who knows when they're even going to run the next WDL? To be honest,
in the summer they will. Maybe in the spring. Maybe Ralph will look at the spring. But he has confirmed they will be running the WDL this year.
I know, but
now whether they do 1 or 2 seasons remains to be seen.
I think they'll just stick to 1 season.
I like the 1 season setup. Make it feel like an annual event, and quite frankly, when your port isn't really ready to be having these events, it gives people a long time to forget all the shit that they dealt with. But we'll see. I mean, I don't know. I know they used to have, 2, sometimes 3 seasons in a year.
Who did 3 seasons? Was that Soul Sucker?
No, WDL.
Huh, I don't remember that. Must have been early years when I didn't.
Oh, it was it was their early years from what I understand, but they would have multiple seasons in a year.
Well, I think the problem with everybody says, "Oh, why don't we just have 2?" I think the problem is that everybody's busy during the winter. The holiday season from October till the end till January. Like everybody's busy doing stuff. Like in the U.S. at least.
Well, you have people that are still in school. You have people that,
or people who have family stuff, or they have their own family, or
they're going to be taking more time off in the summer, things like that. They're just, people free up their schedules more in the summer because they don't want to be, in the winter when it's cold and dreary, you don't mind being at work and doing other things so much that, because it's like, well, it's sit in the fucking house and do nothing all day. But we'll see. I don't know. I don't have anything about it, but I think
they'll just stick to 1. Like I said, the schedules.
Yeah, agreed.
Winter's not that great for U.S. players. I don't know how the season is for other parts of the world. If you run it in the summer, like you can't run it like, oh, we're gonna have our next season in 2 months. It's like that's too soon. So I don't know. I think for a while it'll just be 1. That's fine. It's better than none, I guess. Because remember how everybody was sad that 1 season with when we skipped out in the IDL.
Yeah, well, that was probably a blessing for everybody at that point.
So
yeah, but yeah, man, we are on hour 2 at this point.
Hour?
So yeah, we are hour number 2 at this point.
Wait, has it? No, it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go to the last hour.
Yeah, let's not. So I'm going to close this up here now because I am falling asleep, and that's not a good look for people listening to my podcast. Before we cut this off, though, is there anything else that you just want to put out in the universe for everybody to know?
Nothing that comes to mind, unless you want to talk about another subject.
Nah, we can always get you back on for that. You've got plenty of subjects.
Yeah.
So
maybe we have that round table idea sometime.
We got to get look. Right now, I haven't been talking to any Doom players outside of the very small circle that I've been around, like you, Strangle, Stal, whoever's
Jake.
on my team, Jake. I have not even talked to anybody. I am looking at running a couple of events here in the next couple of months. They're going to be exclusively dual tournaments through the MDF. Right now, tentatively, we're looking at something with Zandronum and then looking at something with Zdaemon. So just keep posted for that. But yeah, man, other than that, like I haven't even begun to. I would love to have these discussions, But then at the same time, there's some people that I actually just don't want to hear them talk either. So
That's not a good look for your podcast.
Well, no. I mean, if they've never been on and you never see them on, then you'll know who they are. But yeah, I don't know. It's just like, we'll see, I guess. I would love to do it, but I'm going to be honest. I'm not sure it's ever going to be me that organizes it. You can organize it. I'll be down. I'll show up.
Yeah. Well, I'll just make you do all the work and I'll just show up. That sounds like a better proposition.
I'm not trying to do the work. That's why I don't want to do it. This shit is work, man.
All you just do is press the record button.
Yeah, but it's getting everybody together. It's getting the fucking thing all recorded and then edited and then releasing it, which takes a lot of time.
Yeah, I have a few ideas. Maybe talk some more about some old drama days and stuff. But that's to come.
That's to come then. So, all right, folks, that's it for us now. We're going to wrap this one up. Everybody say bye to Russ, and I'm going to give Russ a chance to say bye to everybody else. So go ahead and say your farewells.
Farewell till next time. Oh, shit, it's time to disconnect. Hold on. Gonna lag out.
Oda.
They stole my SSG.
Adios, folks.
It lagged out.
Big shout out to Russ King. Glad I could have him on. You know, the timing really couldn't have been better because right now we are in the midst of the finals for the Vengeance CTF League, which was hosted on Odamex this season. And one of the main topics of our conversation today was the stability of not only Odamex, but Zandronum and Zdaemon, but I'm sure to many of the listeners, the conversation about Odamex stood out. I really want to make this clear that I don't hate Odamex. I don't rally against it. I don't rally against the developers or the program design leaders in it. I think it's a great port. I trust Ralph. I mentioned that many times. I trust their developers to get it right. Whatever issues there are, I'm certain that they'll get those right. Same thing goes for Zandronum. Same thing goes for Zdaemon, that I think ultimately these are ports that have been around for a long time. And we really are testing these out to make a better quality. So whether we like it or not, that's kind of the social contract that we've signed, as I alluded to. Now, it's important to recognize that these conversations should be driving improvements in the ports and not driving division. So the way that we convey criticism is also really important. So this podcast was very important for that because it gives the developers a chance to understand what we feel. So I'm really glad that you guys got a chance to listen to this. Be on the lookout for the next podcast because it'll be out soon, and I'll see you